Yeah, so I've been in a space where I'm trying to navigate how do you pivot? How do you start a new chapter? How do you do something different? How do you embrace change? And this is change that is actively happening to you. Like, it's affecting your life, it's affecting your relationships, it's affecting your career, it's affecting your mental health. So how do you navigate that? And I would love to live in a world where we can have honest conversations about this without it just becoming one of those, oh no, but as a good Christian, you're not supposed to feel envy, you're not supposed to feel those feelings. I mean, foremost, you are a human being. And there is that famous quote to say you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and you are going to feel these things. But if you ask me, I feel like these moments where we feel so, where we feel so human, where we feel so ridden with our human emotions of envy, of being upset, of being irritated, of being frustrated, aren't those the best times to actually engage with God to say, I'm feeling this way. Help me sort out why I'm feeling this way. Help me figure out how I can feel better. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to go on feeling this way. And that's the beautiful thing also about being a human being is we put timelines on how we should feel, but we also put timelines on where we should be. And I think that is where we mess ourselves up, if you ask me. Last year, I was in a space where I was winning at life. I was winning. I was getting the jobs that I thought I would never get. I was networking with people I thought I would never be in the same room with. I met some people in the past 2-3 years I thought I would never meet in my life, and sometimes when you look back on your life, when you look back on the timeline of your life, you see this very interesting thing. You see synchronicities, you see things that are not a coincidence, and maybe for you to get to where you are today, something had to happen to you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago to make you be in this space where you are this person. You know what you know who you know. And last year was a year where I felt I needed God, and I feel like every human being reaches that point where it's like, I don't have any other option, so let me try the most trusted option that has proven to work, And I remember when I was going through these things of going from a new work environment to another work environment, trying to adjust on what I'm supposed to do with my life. I remember just praying. I started praying. I wasn't a very prayerful person. I wasn't a very spiritual person, So I got to this place where I would pray. I would find myself praying on certain things. I'm about to have this meeting. I pray. I remember there's an interview, the first job I got last year. I prayed before going to the interview, and my nerves were just so calm, and I started noticing something. When I bring things to God through prayer, there was something that would happen. But one thing that I promised myself was I'm going to give myself time to navigate this special relationship I have with God and get to a place where I actually have an idea of what I want our relationship to look like. And they do say prayer is heavenly language. That is how God talks to us. That is how we talk to God, And so I got into the space of, this is what I want to see in my life, but how can I get there, And one thing about God is He will give you lessons. He will put people in your way. He will put places in your way, everything, people, places, lessons for you to understand. And I have this belief to say, God is so genius. God is so amazing. He, they, them. He finds ways to reach out to us in a way we will know this is nobody else but God. And maybe that is why there's that belief to say a relationship with God is very personal, and we all experience it on different levels, And it's one thing being connected to God, but being in His presence and constantly having this relationship with Him where you're constantly in His presence and He shows up, that's something. So I was listening to my usual weekly sermons, and I remember I was listening to a sermon from Elevation Church and also Forward City Church. One thing I've come to appreciate about my Christian life is the synchronicities that I'm finding. Like, I will maybe read a story about a certain character, and then I find the same story, let's say in a podcast, and then maybe I find myself in a chapter or book, and I find it so amazing. It's like there's a guiding map that's being laid out. And you don't really realize you have a guiding map until like a few sessions later, like, wait a minute, you know? So I was jotting down some of the points from the podcasts and the certain pointers that stood out to me. I mean, of course, we are creators just like God is. God is the first farmer, by the way. God is the first farmer recorded in history. He actually made everything, pastures, greenery, the ocean, everything that exists. You know, he was the first creator and the first farmer, and he made us in his likeness, which means we too are also creators, you know. And there's something interesting that I learned recently. It talked about how planted is one of the most used words in the Bible. Planted. And it sent me on this quest to actually look at how many times it appears. And it actually appears a lot in so many books, you know. And it basically reminds us to say we are creators, we are farmers, we can create something, we can plant something into fruition. For example, Apostle Paul always talked about how we have to plant good seed in order to harvest a good harvest. And Adam is such an interesting Bible character because of the kind of model of faith he was and still is. And I think that's why he's so referred to when it comes to the model of faith and obedience, you know, in your life as a Christian. I mean, Adam was, you know, it's like Moses. It's just like, oh, okay, that's the guy you're choosing to fulfill your will. Interesting, you know. But one thing that I really find so fascinating about God is he uses the most interesting people, sometimes the most unexpected people, to fulfill his will, you know. And what I find so interesting about Adam is because he had so much faith and the willingness to obey, God put him in charge of the biggest task ever, and that is the task of you are going to have a great nation, you are going to have a great name, and that comes with a lot of responsibility. Imagine being the father to a future generation you don't know about. That's crazy, you know. And for me, it's how obedient he always was. When God says do this, he does that. Go here, he goes there, you know. Like in Genesis, when God calls Abraham, Genesis chapter 12, when God calls Abraham and tells him to leave. Imagine being told to leave your home, your family, everything that you know behind, to go somewhere where you've never been, and to continue a prophecy that is yet to be fulfilled. And the interesting thing that I find about being the one you are told to say, this is the prophecy that I am going to fulfill, is you might not be part of that, you know, fulfillment. You might not be there to actually enjoy that promised land. And it's such a bittersweet, double-edged sword. You know, you are working towards the goodness of something, but you might not even reap the benefits of that. You might not even reap the harvest. So imagine you're planting seeds for a harvest you won't even get to enjoy. But because of how much humility and obedience and faith he had, he still did it. And so I was thinking, like, another way we could interpret planting good seed and harvesting a good harvest is faith and actions. Because in James it talks about how actions without faith is dead faith. You can't do things without having a certain belief. And a belief is simply a thought that you keep repeating in your mind over and over and over and over again until it becomes part of who you are, until it becomes something that you are sure of. Like, I believe in this. This is my stance on this, you know? And through faith and through believing, we actually do get saved. You know, it really does repeat so many times to say you can't get saved unless you have faith. You have so much faith, even just a little faith as small as a mustard seed. I mean, we have the examples of the woman with the blood issue who bled for so many years, and she didn't know why, but because of the faith she had in Jesus, this man she didn't know to heal her. Just by her touching his cloak, she got healed. And even he said, he was like, it's the faith that she has that has restored her life. And we see that in so many examples in the Bible. But one example I would like to use is Abraham, our father Abraham. You know, the guy who started it all, God's friend. Imagine being so faithful and so obedient that you're actually God's friend. Like, God is your guy. That is your bestie.